in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. It wasn't until I was brought into the bridal chamber that I discovered the one who married me wasn't my betrothed, but his uncle. My betrothed had already given his heart to someone else, while the one who replaced him was his uncle, pale as snow, with enchanting beauty that could topple kingdoms, the most powerful minister at court. Only this man was also notorious for his madness. Merely mentioning his name was enough to make children stop crying in the night. That evening, red lanterns flickered, drums and trumpets outside the courtyard thundered with earth-shaking noise. I sat before the dressing table, wearing an embroidered wedding dress, with mother and little sister behind me, their eyes red with tears. I curved my lips slightly, forcing out a smile thin as silk, trying to appear as a bride should, with some joy. The wedding attendant stood to one side, flustered and anxious, for rarely had anyone seen such misery at a wedding. Mother dabbed her tears with a handkerchief, taking small steps to my side, gently taking my hand and caressing it tenderly. "Elena, our family has faced unexpected calamity. If it weren't to protect you, I would never let you marry in such haste." At this point, Mother's eyes lit up with a glimmer of joy. "Fortunately, you and young Master Adrian Song have been childhood sweethearts. After marriage, you'll surely be a harmonious couple, blessed with 100 years of happiness." Mentioning Adrian, my heart also bloomed with a smile. I turned to embrace Mother's waist, whispering softly against her chest, "Adrian treats me so well. I only hope Mother and little sister can live peacefully too." Mother looked up, wiping the tears from the corner of her eyes. "Father will recover eventually." Mother also smiled at me. "He will recover." Seeing the atmosphere had softened, the wedding attendant hurried forward to speak some auspicious words. When the commotion outside the door rose, the wedding attendant and mother helped place the red veil over my head. The wedding attendant led me away, and my hand was placed in Adrian's. With my vision obscured, I felt somewhat panicked, only daring to carefully call Adrian's name. Hearing his soft acknowledgement, my heart felt somewhat at ease. But why did his voice carry a tremor? With so many people around, I couldn't speak freely, only feeling Adrian's palm hot and damp. He must be nervous. Well, I was equally anxious. Everything proceeded smoothly after that, stepping over the charcoal basin, bowing to heaven and earth. Even entering the bridal chamber seemed normal. It wasn't until the wedding attendant wanted to lift my red veil that I suddenly gripped her hand tightly. "This veil must be lifted by my husband according to proper ritual." The wedding attendant fell silent for a moment, then said, "Miss, the Duke is currently unconscious. How can he lift the veil?" "The Duke, the Song family has 2 dukes, it's a prestigious household, but Adrian is the heir to Duke Piguo's title." I immediately yanked off the red veil, looking around at the unfamiliar room, my gaze fixed directly on the wedding attendant. "Where is Adrian?" The wedding attendant avoided my gaze, stammering without answering. I pulled out the golden hairpin from my head, pressing it to her throat. "Where is Adrian?" "In the main hall, performing the wedding ceremony." "The ceremony? But I already performed it." "Adrian is still performing his ceremony, meaning he's marrying someone else." My legs went weak, and I collapsed onto the bed, feeling something beneath me. Turning my head, I saw Duke Marcus Song of Jungguo, pale as paper, lying unconscious on the bed. He had his eyes tightly shut, looking weak and lifeless. I gritted my teeth and stood up, grabbing my wedding dress and running outside. If I was married off to Marcus by mistake, then who is Adrian marrying? What exactly is happening here? I must investigate this thoroughly. I, Elena Yun, would rather remain unmarried than accept such humiliation. The wedding attendant tried to stop me, but I came from a military family. How could a weak woman hold me back? The sound of the ceremony completion rang out from the main hall, followed by festive cheers. I stood outside the door and saw mother and little sister biting their lips to hold back tears, and also saw the man who should have been my husband, gently supporting another woman. I took a deep breath. "Adrian." My voice rang out, and the entire hall fell silent. Clearly today's wedding wasn't meant for me. Mother and little sister rushed to my side, grasping my hand with trembling, choked voices. "Elena." I patted Mother's hand gently, softly consoling her. "Mother, don't cry." I released Mother's hand and walked steadily toward Adrian. The wedding attire he wore was also exquisitely crafted, but at first glance, it clearly didn't match the outfit I was wearing. So from the beginning, he never intended to marry me. I stared directly at Adrian, and he immediately turned his head away. Elena, don't look at me like that. I never liked you anyway. Now that I can marry the one I love, I'm not wrong. I laughed softly. The one you love. Adrian, marrying someone you love isn't wrong, but deceiving me like this, is that not wrong either? If you didn't want to marry me, we could have broken our engagement. Why did you lure me here to watch you marry someone else? What am I in your eyes? By this point, my eyes were beginning to sting, but I still tried to demand an explanation. In Adrian's eyes, there was no trace of affection, only complete annoyance. Your father is severely injured and unconscious, and my Uncle Marcus is also unconscious. Marrying you to Uncle Marcus counts as double happiness. Moreover, Uncle Marcus is the Duke of Jungguo. You've become a duchess the moment you entered our door. You should be grateful to me. My former betrothed actually gave me away to his uncle, speaking in a tone of benevolent charity as if I had just received something precious. Who wants the title of duchess? Mother gripped my hand tightly, her voice rarely so firm. Adrian, you're truly despicable and shameless. Elena, we're going home. No matter how far the Yun family has fallen, we cannot let others trample on us like this. I felt the same way, so when Mother pulled my hand, I was ready to turn and leave. Stop. The in-laws may leave, but Elena cannot. She has already performed the ceremony with our family. From now on, she belongs to the Song family. Old Lady Song, who had been sitting in the place of honor, suddenly stood up, her bamboo cane striking the floor with thunderous cracks. I turned back, my voice full of mockery. The Duke of Jungguo is unconscious, so who performed the ceremony with me? If I remember correctly, wasn't it Adrian? Then I looked toward Adrian. What's this? Did Adrian intend to make the woman he loves a concubine? Adrian glared at me, and even the bride beside him couldn't help but lift her veil. Elena, you're dreamin' I dreaming. I smiled coldly. Even if Adrian begged me, I wouldn't deign to marry him. The thought makes me nauseous. Adrian, tell me if I'm speaking the truth. Before Adrian could answer, Old Lady Song spoke up. She pointed to a cage in the corner. You performed the ceremony not with Adrian, but with that rooster. I looked over and indeed saw a majestic rooster standing upright, facing me directly. When the groom is unavailable, having a rooster stand in for the ceremony is legitimate. Even if officials came, they couldn't deny it. Mother was pulling me to leave, but I suddenly didn't want to go anymore. The ceremony was complete. Even if this reached the Supreme Court or His Majesty, I was already a member of the Song family. Since it had come to this, I might as well turn Adrian's wedding into complete chaos. I pulled Mother to sit in the seat reserved for elders, grabbing a handful of melon seeds and placing them in her hand. Very well. If I'm married to Marcus, then I'm Adrian's ninth-in-law. Little Adrian, shouldn't you address your new aunt? Adrian's face instantly turned green, looking like he'd swallowed a fly. Elena Yun, you're just someone married to a dying man. What right do you have to put on such airs? You're dying. Those 4 words spun in my head like a curse. Outsiders rumored that Marcus wasn't truly Song family blood, just a child the old duke had picked up from outside, only gaining favor and titles because His Majesty loved him. Duke Piguo's household had already declined, only regaining prestige thanks to Marcus. Now treating him this way was nothing short of ingratitude and betrayal. I lowered my head to look at my shoes. Little Adrian, speaking about your uncle that way, isn't that going too far? He was already dying, yet he left you the title of Duchess. You should be grateful. Adrian had now torn off his mask, revealing his true nature. I was about to speak when suddenly a cold, deep voice rang out from the doorway. Oh, when did I become dying? Why don't I know about this myself? Marcus appeared against the light, and for a moment I couldn't see his features clearly, but seeing someone supporting him, he had obviously just awakened, his body extremely weak. When he came closer, besides the impression of whiteness, I noticed something else about those eyes. Even looking at grass, they held deep affection. Even gazing at trees, they showed lingering attachment. Marcus looked at me and smiled slightly. My lady, marrying someone dying like me, do you feel wronged? I was momentarily speechless. This person called me my lady so naturally, without any unfamiliarity. I stood up and walked to his side, studying him carefully before shaking my head. I can see that my husband has the physiognomy of longevity. How could you die young? Someone must be plotting against you. Marcus's notorious reputation was widespread. I flattered him with a few words while conveniently stepping on Adrian's pride. Adrian's expression changed dramatically. He opened his mouth to speak but didn't dare, and then saw the bride beside him suddenly drop to her knees. Sister Elena, please don't blame Adrian. He only wanted to give me and the child a proper status by marrying me. If you truly don't wish to marry Uncle Marcus, then I'm willing to share a husband with you. After speaking, Sophia's eyes shifted, and tears immediately fell. It's just that Adrian's firstborn child must not become illegitimate. I rolled my eyes contemptuously. Sophia's words inside and out were nothing more than wanting me to become a concubine. Even with father unconscious and the Yun family's future uncertain, I was still the legitimate eldest daughter of the Yun family. How could I lower myself to become someone's concubine? I turned to look at Marcus, my eyes bright as stars, but my words were directed at Sophia. My husband is strong and healthy, holds high position and great authority, mature and steady, elegant and distinguished. Why wouldn't I be willing to marry him? As for Adrian there, with his romantic escapades throughout the pleasure quarters, getting close to him might expose me to diseases. Sophia immediately froze, her eyes darting toward Adrian. That look, how did escape my notice? Oh, so this Sophia truly came from a brothel. How could the Song family allow Adrian to marry a woman of such questionable background? It really opened my eyes. I was getting quite carried away with my performance when Marcus finally spoke his third sentence of the day. Marrying me a wife without my permission, and now insulting my wife. How should this be handled? Marcus took my hand and squeezed it gently. They're all family members. It wouldn't be proper to skin them alive. Should we make them kneel in the ancestral hall? Hearing the 3 words, skin them alive, I shuddered slightly, catching a glimpse of regret in his eyes. Only then did I understand that his reputation for madness wasn't unfounded. He truly regretted not being able to kill Adrian. I quickly grabbed his sleeve, trying to hide my fear. Husband, seeing blood on the wedding night is an ill omen. Kneeling in the ancestral hall is punishment enough. I paused, then added, and don't let Adrian eat or drink. My lady's temper is still too kind. Just not letting them eat or drink isn't enough. Marcus still appeared weak and frail with shallow breathing, but everyone in the front hall didn't dare make a sound, fearing he might truly fly into a rage and skin someone alive. Clear away all cushions and don't provide any ice. Let the couple kneel in the ancestral hall for 3 days and 3 nights. After kneeling, they must immediately come out to serve tea to their elders. It was the height of summer's heat, and though the ancestral hall was cooler than other places, the midday sun was still enough to make one dizzy and faint. Without cushions, without ice, having to kneel for so long and then immediately come out to serve tea, even if those 2 didn't die, they'd lose half their lives. I lowered my head and couldn't help but shake with silent laughter where no one could see. Marcus turned to look at me, his turn becoming lazy and indifferent. Why is my lady crying? I froze and looked up, my smile not yet fully contained. His slender finger lightly tapped my forehead, meaningfully saying, "Oh my, so my lady is actually feeling vindicated. It seems the person they secretly married to me is quite interesting indeed." If I wanted to continue living in the Song manor, Old Lady Song, Marcus's mother, was still in good health. I feared it might take 3 to 5 years before any resolution. I only wanted to live quietly and peacefully in obscurity, never expecting Marcus to be such a cruel person, dragging me before everyone and forcing me to tear off my mask in dealing with the Song family. I gritted my teeth and suppressed my intention to hook my arm through his. What is my husband saying? How could I feel vindicated? Adrian and his wife were disrespectful to their elders and were punished to kneel in the ancestral hall. As their aunt-in-law, I only hate that iron cannot become steel. How could I have any vindictive feelings? My lady speaks very correctly. I rolled my eyes slightly. This person was putting on a gentle facade again, truly skilled at pretending. Adrian and Sophia were half pushed, half dragged by servants to the ancestral hall. Marcus watched their retreating figures before withdrawing his smile, glancing at Old Lady Song sitting in the place of honor, then pulling me away. "Thushan, he is your nephew after all." Old Lady Song's voice was no longer as harsh as when she spoke to my mother. Now her tone was soft and gentle, very much like a kind elder of appropriate age. But within that kindly appearance it wasn't hard to detect deeply hidden wariness. Marcus gave a cold laugh, not answering, just pushing me gently. I stopped and bowed, saying, "Mother, my husband has been unconscious for a long time and has just awakened. He must be tired. While it's natural for elders to instruct their juniors, if there's nothing else, we husband and wife request permission to withdraw." I turned to support Marcus as we left, not forgetting to give Mother a reassuring look as we passed. Although Marcus had a bad reputation, he had never made things difficult for me. This marriage was something neither of us had volunteered for. If I could negotiate with him, I might be able to obtain a divorce letter. Fortunately, everything had already exploded during the wedding ceremony. If I had actually married Adrian and only then discovered his true nature, that would have been stepping into a pit of fire, and escaping would have been too late. Throughout the journey back, neither of us spoke a word. It wasn't until we returned to the bridal chamber that I felt somewhat awkward. In my 16 years of life, I had only seen Marcus twice, both times from a great distance, so far that no one noticed whether I paid proper respects or not. What I knew about him came mostly from the vicious rumors circulating outside, that he drank human blood, made lanterns from human skin, wore human faces as masks. There was nothing people couldn't imagine that he supposedly wouldn't do. And now I had become the wife of such a terrifying person. Marcus sat down on the edge of the bed, while I stood transfixed upon entering the room, staring at a lantern. This lantern looked completely different from ordinary ones. Could it really be made from human skin? I slowly began to feel fear rising within me. "My lady, that lantern was personally crafted by your humble husband, using the skin of someone who had died less than half a watch ago, while the skin was still warm and not yet stiff. When made into a lantern, the light it gives off is translucent, and the candle flame is like moonlight, cold and gentle." Marcus's voice came from behind me, his warm breath touching my neck. Without looking, I knew how close he was standing. My legs felt somewhat weak, but I still managed to turn around. Facing his dark eyes, I said, "So my husband must be very experienced in making lanterns." I can see that my lady is also quite delicate." I was terrified by the unfinished implication in his words, biting my lip and gripping my handkerchief tightly. "I fear you'll be disappointed, sir. I am the daughter of a military family, not raised delicately. From childhood, I followed father in the military camps, rolling around with wounds no less than soldiers who had experienced battlefields. My words were 3 parts truth, 7 parts fabrication. I only had one long scar on my back, so deep and ugly that even I couldn't bear to look at it." But as soon as I finished speaking, Marcus immediately looked dejected. "I forgot you're the daughter of that old man. If you were really scared to death by me, I'm afraid he would come with his gun to shoot me dead." "That old man refers to my father." Marcus sat on the bed, his gaze casually sweeping over me. "That lantern is a tribute from the feudal lords, bestowed by His Majesty. It's not made from human skin." With that, he lay down, looking around the room hung with red curtains, quite festive indeed. "My lady, on this night of consummating the marriage, with flowers and candles, waves rippling the red curtains, why aren't you sleeping?" The corner of my mouth twitched. This person was truly mad, speaking incoherently, making it impossible for others to know how to respond. Instead of approaching him, I walked to the desk, picked up a brush and wrote a divorce letter, blowing gently to dry the ink, then carefully taking the divorce letter and walking to the bedside. "Your Grace, when you were unconscious, I was deceived into this marriage. Since no one understands the full story of this marriage, why don't we divorce amicably and each seek our own happiness?" Marcus propped himself up, took the divorce letter from my hand, and studied each character carefully. "Your father is a crude man who doesn't reason, but I didn't expect you to be so well educated. Your handwriting is also elegant. It's just a pity that this divorce is impossible." He tore the divorce letter in half, crumpled it into balls, then casually threw it on the ground without a care. I glared at him and bent to pick up the pieces. "Why not?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, pulled my hand to drag me onto the bed, and held me tightly without letting go. "I don't want to, because you're much more interesting than all the other women in the capital. Moreover, I don't want to bear the reputation of having been divorced." I struggled to escape his embrace, but he held me tight without any gap. Though Marcus appeared weak, his strength was far greater than a woman like me. "Has your Grace never met other women? How do you know they're not as interesting as me?" Marcus had already closed his eyes, resting his head on my shoulder, sighing softly. Because when they meet me, they all cry. I should know that I had been famous for my sharp tongue since childhood, yet today I was repeatedly left speechless by Marcus. When he appeared, it was either confiscating property or killing people. Not being afraid of him would be strange. But he refused to divorce, and I couldn't do anything about it. Running away wouldn't work either. I thought for a long time without finding a way to make him let go, then he seemed to read my mind and held me even tighter. My lady, I was sleeping peacefully when you woke me up. Now I'm very tired. Today has been eventful enough. You must be tired too. Since we're here, let's just sleep. Everything I wanted to say got stuck in my throat, and behind me came the sound of his steady breathing. I remembered falling onto him today and his pale complexion then. Fine, as he said, since we're here, let's just sleep. Whatever else, we'll deal with it later. It's time for the tea ceremony. The Duke and Duchess are still lying in their room. This really isn't proper at all. Old Lady Song had been waiting in the front hall for a long time, making the elders wait. The Duchess truly lacks proper upbringing. The sharp voice of a matron outside penetrated the room through the window, along with the voice of Maid Grace trying to stop her. Looking at me as I sat up, the sky was only at the hour of Mao, just dawn. While it was normal for Old Lady Song at her advanced age to rise early, I usually slept until nearly the hour of Sai at home. I snorted coldly. It seemed today's tea ceremony was merely an excuse to discipline the new bride, as well as an excuse to vent anger on behalf of that dog couple still kneeling in the ancestral hall. Grace was trying hard to stop that matron outside the door, and the woman's voice grew increasingly sharp and bitter. I leisurely walked behind the screen, changed out of last night's wedding dress, and put on a deep purple gown. Before leaving the room, I glanced at Marcus, who was still sleeping. I wondered how he could remain motionless despite all the commotion. He truly slept deeply. I didn't dare wake him. After all, the tea ceremony was the bride's duty and had nothing to do with him. I might as well let him sleep peacefully. When I opened the door, that matron had been pulling at Grace's hand, but when she saw me emerge, she finally stopped, though her mouth continued its endless taunting. The Duchess is truly arrogant, making the elders wait so long. Even the servants beside you rely on your influence to be disrespectful, daring to oppose me. The matron was haughty and domineering, naturally backed by Old Lady Song's intentions. I glanced at her indifferently. What are you? A mere slave daring to speak to me in such a manner. It seems Old Lady Song's ability to discipline servants isn't much either, allowing a mere slave to bully even the Duchess. This is truly lawless and unruly. The matron's face alternated between pale and green. She was about to say something more, but I wasn't the type to endure being bullied. I turned to Grace, changing my tone. Grace, you were disrespectful to Mother's servant today. If I don't punish you, it wouldn't be proper. Go below and slap yourself 20 times. Let Rose attend me today instead. Grace's eyes darted cleverly, immediately understanding that I was giving her an excuse to leave. Those 20 slaps, no one would dare check if they were actually given. Then I looked at that matron again. She was smiling flatteringly, thinking she'd gained face, so I pointed to the 2 servants standing at the door. Grace was disrespectful to Mother's servant. I've already punished her with 20 slaps. Now this slave dares to be insolent toward me, the Duchess. If I don't punish her, I can't quell the hatred in my heart. So you too, give her 20 slaps for me. The 2 servants hesitated briefly, but I immediately darkened my expression. Don't forget who you'll be living under in the future. The 2 immediately rushed forward, pinning that matron to the ground. She wailed and cried piercingly, sounding no different from a pig being slaughtered. I signaled with my eyes, and Rose understood, immediately stuffing a handkerchief into the woman's mouth. Initially, the 2 servants didn't dare truly strike, but Rose was bold and had learned martial arts from me. Hearing the weak slapping sounds, she frowned and stepped forward to replace one of them. Only then did crisp, resounding slaps ring out. I silently observed, because I didn't establish authority. Everyone in this manner would surely consider me easy to bully. Insolent. An aged shout rang out from outside the door. I looked up and saw the lady of Duke Piguo's manor entering with a retinue of servants escorting Old Lady Song. Elena, you dare to beaven those close to me. Next, won't you plan to beat me as well? Old Lady Song pointed at me, her formerly kind demeanor completely vanished, now looking exactly like a wild demon wanting to skin someone alive. I performed the ritual bow, my voice cold. How would this daughter-in-law dare disrespect mother? It's just that matron was far too insolent. No matter what, I'm still someone who married legitimately into the Duke of Jungo's manor. How can I allow a mere slave to climb over my head and oppress me? Good, very good. If a slave was disrespectful, then beating her is right. But do you know how long I and your great-aunt have been waiting for you in the front hall? Disrespecting elders, daring to make me and your great-aunt wait for nearly an entire watch. Tell me, isn't this deserving of punishment? I took a deep breath, gritting my teeth in restraint. This daughter-in-law knows her fault and accepts punishment. I couldn't bear this hat of disrespecting elders. If others pinned this on me, I feared little sister would be implicated when she wanted to marry later. I knelt on the ground. This daughter-in-law accepts punishment. Old Lady Song snorted coldly. Then kneel there until you can't bear it anymore. Can't bear it anymore. Didn't that mean I'd have to kneel together with Adrian? But there was no other choice. I could only bow my head and comply. And that person named Marcus has been sleeping so soundly, hasn't he woken up yet? Could he be dead? While my mind wandered with these thoughts, Old Lady Song saw me being obedient and didn't know what else to say. Instead, Adrian's mother spoke up. Sister-in-law, hasn't Uncle Marcus awakened yet? Yesterday he had just regained consciousness, but who would have thought his body was still so weak? With all this commotion and he still hasn't gotten up, hasn't he fallen unconscious again? Her voice was gentle. Previously, I only thought she was a person of mild temperament, but after yesterday's events, I understood clearly that she was a hypocrite, skilled at pretense. When she spoke these words, her eyes briefly showed a hint of joy beneath the pain. How could I not see it clearly? And Old Lady Song's eyes also hinted at hidden pleasure. Why was this? Even if Marcus wasn't her biological son, the incompetence of Duke Piguo's eldest branch meant all the family's honor and disgrace rested on Marcus's shoulders. They should hope for his well-being. Why did they seem to wish he wouldn't wake up? Intuition told me there must be hidden secrets here. Marcus might truly be unconscious from weakness, but absolutely couldn't let these two know. I pretended to have back pain, twisting my body and patting my waist gently, then lowered my head bashfully. Last night, my husband and I talked until late. He must be too tired and sleeping deeply. Adrian's mother and Old Lady Song paused briefly, but then still insisted on entering the room. Their manner was as if they were trying to confirm something. My heart burned like fire, but for a moment I couldn't think of any way to stop them. It's not even dawn yet, and mother and great-aunt suddenly want to barge into the bridal chamber to disturb someone's sleep. What's your intention? A familiar voice rang out. It was still that deep voice, difficult to fathom, but because he had just awakened, it carried a slight hoarseness, revealing several parts enchanting. Marcus draped on his outer robe and walked out slowly, causing Old Lady Song and Adrian's mother to become momentarily flustered. Marcus stepped in front of me, reaching out to help me up, his gaze toward Old Lady Song deep as an abyss. Old Lady Song spoke cautiously. With such commotion outside, you still didn't wake up, and your wife didn't know to show concern, so mother was worried and wanted to check, to avoid delays in your condition getting worse. In Marcus's arms, I shot a contemptuous glance. I was exactly the inconsiderate one she was referring to. Marcus squeezed my hand gently, saying leisurely, Elena already explained everything. We talked until late last night, so I was tired and didn't want to get up. He curled his lips in a smile, his tone half real, half joking. Surely mother and great-aunt understand what talking until late means. Consummating the marriage with flowers and candles. Do I need to explain in more detail? My face suddenly flushed bright red like the evening glow. I never expected the excuse I made up would be overheard by him, and he dared to speak such explicit words to Old Lady Song. I was truly embarrassed beyond measure. Old Lady Song and Adrian's mother forced awkward smiles full of confusion. This isn't good, this isn't good. Adrian's voice came from outside, carrying sobs as if he'd just been terrified. He ran into the courtyard, his entire body covered in blood, making everyone stare. Adrian collapsed to the ground, trembling as he clutched his mother's hem. Mother Sophia. Sophia is bleeding. In the ancestral hall, everyone gathered in a circle, all eyes fixed intently on the physician. Old Lady Song and Adrian's mother knelt before the ancestral tablets, constantly praying. Protect us, protect us. Beside them, Marcus leaned half his body against me, watching the chaotic scene before us, smiling slightly, his voice also light. A group of fools grieving over some illegitimate child of unknown origin. When he spoke these words, Marcus's eyes filled with coldness and detachment. Looking into those indifferent eyes, my heart briefly froze, suddenly remembering that he too was a child the old Duke had brought back from outside, now wielding great power and influence, but surely in his youth he had endured considerable coldness. Thinking of this, somehow my chest tightened, and several parts of pity arose in my heart. I gently took his hand, squeezing it softly as a form of comfort, then remembered his current power and position. He had once said the child in Sophia's belly wasn't Adrian's, so he surely wasn't wrong. I lowered my voice to ask, "Husband, how do you know that child isn't Adrian's?" Marcus looked at my hand holding his expression changing, then resumed his inscrutable appearance. "I won't tell you." I felt choked up and pressed further. This time, Marcus resolutely refused to even glance at me, turning his head to look at Sophia lying on the ground, moaning incessantly. "Elena, this is all your fault. If not for you, how could my child have had an accident?" Sophia's venomous accusations mixed with her pained wails made even listeners feel chilled. I said nothing, but it seemed as if all the resentment in the ancestral hall was directed at me. Adrian's eyes were bloodshot, glaring at me murderously. "Elena, if anything happens to Sophia and the child, I absolutely won't spare you." Old Lady Song and Adrian's mother also looked at me with faces full of malicious hatred. I laughed coldly. What? Did I force them to compete for a bride in the middle of the wedding ceremony? Did I say Marcus was dying? If not for me, I'm afraid you'd all have been skinned alive by Marcus already. Where would you get the life to sit here and scold me? I rolled my eyes and gently tugged Marcus's hand. "Husband, can you save Sophia? I truly don't want to be resented like this." "Is that so?" Marcus raised an eyebrow at me. I nodded vigorously, then tiptoed to whisper in his ear. "If this child truly isn't Adrian's, then the timing won't be right. Just let them discover it themselves. I don't want to be blamed without cause." Marcus's eyes looking at me became even more interested. "Someone come. Go to the Imperial Medical Institute in the palace and summon the Imperial physician." The hidden guards in the shadows immediately acknowledged the order and swiftly departed. As soon as Marcus spoke, Sophia lying on the ground suddenly stopped moaning, but immediately after began wailing even more violently, her body writhing and rolling. Seeing she was about to hit the incense burner nearby, I rushed over to hold her down. Looking at her, I spoke gently, "Sister-in-law Adrian, don't move around like this. If the incense burner falls and hits your belly, the child will be lost before the Imperial physician arrives. Be more careful." Meeting Sophia's gaze, the hatred in her eyes seemed to materialize and spill out. I smiled even more brightly. "Sister-in-law, rest assured, this child will definitely be saved." The Imperial physician arrived very quickly. Seeing the ancestral hall covered in blood, he was only briefly startled, then hurriedly stepped before Marcus, bowing respectfully. "Has your grace awakened? Is your health still stable?" Marcus waved his hand, pointing towards Sophia. "Save the child for her." The Imperial physician bowed in acknowledgement, shouldering his medicine chest, walking before Sophia to check her pulse, then inserting several silver needles. After that, he leisurely wrote a prescription, instructing on medication timing and preparation methods. The entire process was swift yet thorough. At first glance, it was clear the child in Sophia's belly was fundamentally not in any danger. Most likely she was pretending. Even the rolling and wailing was to deliberately knock over the incense burner, using it as a legitimate excuse to miscarry. Unfortunately, I had stopped her. Seeing the situation had stabilized, I pulled Marcus's hand to leave. Just as we stepped to the threshold of the ancestral hall, I heard Adrian's voice, both forced and stubborn. "Elena, don't think that saving Sophia and the child means I'll forgive you. Since you've married my uncle, don't dream about me anymore. There was never any fate between us." I stopped walking, not answering, but nearly clawed Marcus's clothing to shreds. After years of being childhood sweethearts, I had always thought he was a gentle gentleman. Only now did I realize he was actually a brainless fool. I smiled under Marcus's teasing gaze, slowly turning around. "Adrian, perhaps you don't know, I agreed to marry you originally only because we had a betrothal from childhood." Then I looked up at Marcus with timid eyes. "Actually, the one I've truly loved wholeheartedly is your uncle, Marcus. It's just that due to the difference in our positions, and being unfamiliar with each other, it wasn't convenient to express my feelings. In the end, I should thank you for making it possible for me to marry the one in my heart. This cleverly spoken passage came from me with such sincerity, my gaze at Marcus filled with deep affection, that in outsiders' eyes I must appear as a woman of profound love and heavy sentiment. Marcus extended his cold hand to embrace my waist, bowing his head to kiss the top of mine gently. It seems my lady and I are truly mutually devoted. I too have admired my lady for a long time, only previously I dared only steal glances, not daring to act, fearing accusations of stealing my nephew's betrothed. Who would have thought that upon awakening, the woman of my dreams had already become my bedfellow? Adrian's face turned deathly pale inch by inch, his gaze at me gradually turning dark, as if I had betrayed him. I couldn't be bothered to look at him anymore. Taking Marcus's hand and walking straight out of the ancestral hall. Reaching the flower garden, I couldn't bear his gaze anymore, so I stopped, looked up into Marcus's rarely serious eyes, pursed my lips, and released his hand. Why are you looking at me like that? What we did in front of the Song family was just acting. I haven't forgotten how you teased me last night. Truly liking me, because of the different positions and unfamiliarity, not daring to confess feelings. Who would have thought my lady's heart was so devoted to me? I curled my lips defiantly in response. Mutually devoted, afraid of being accused of stealing the nephew's betrothed. My husband isn't much better. Marcus looked at me, suddenly clutching his stomach and bursting into laughter, laughing until tears fell before stopping. I stared in amazement. What's so funny? Marcus lifted my chin, planting a quick kiss on my lips. I'm laughing because I was schemed into taking a wife, yet married exactly the person who pleases me most. I was stunned by his sudden action, then my whole face turned bright red, both ashamed and angry. I stomped hard on his foot, glared at him, then pulled the flustered Rose, whose eyes didn't know where to look, and turned to run back to the inner courtyard. Marcus remained standing behind, silently following, his smile never fading. I ran into the room, shut the door tightly, and leaned against it, breathing heavily. Marcus followed shortly after. I felt the door behind me being pushed, but it was blocked by me and he couldn't get in. Rose stood beside me, hesitating for a moment before finally speaking. Miss, that young master isn't a good person. What if he really goes mad and kills someone? I closed my eyes, imagining myself bleeding all over the ground, shuddered a few times, then quickly banished the image from my mind, speaking loudly to Rose, actually for the person outside the door to hear. Never. That scoundrel acted so rudely. I'd be stupid not to be angry. Rose's voice grew smaller and smaller. But the young master is originally my lady's husband. I closed my eyes, hearing cold laughter from outside, and gritted my teeth. Rose, whose servant are you? Of course Rose serves my lady, but also serves my lady's husband. The words were correct, but I was still hoping for a divorce letter to return home. Furious to the point of trembling, I turned to open the door, pointing at Marcus. Husband, what's this? I was forced to marry you, quickly give me a divorce letter. Only with a divorce letter will I let you into the room. The smile on Marcus's face immediately vanished, his expression instantly becoming dark and threatening. I felt breathless, my previously straight posture immediately going limp, but I still tried to maintain my dignity by glaring at him. What kind of look is that? Are you really planning to skin me alive to make a lantern? My trembling voice at the end betrayed me. I couldn't help but admit I was indeed somewhat afraid. Marcus stared at me intently, then turned toward the study. Divorce? Impossible unless I die. Elena, instead of focusing on this, why don't you return home once and see why your father still hasn't awakened, what his study is hiding? I had been following him to demand the divorce letter, but hearing this, I froze, watching Marcus's retreating figure and falling into deep thought. Father had returned victorious from battle, but was ambushed on the way back to the capital and fell into a coma. Whether imperial physicians from the palace or civilian doctors, all said the injuries were severe but shouldn't cause such prolonged unconsciousness. Mother feared something might happen to him. If I had to observe mourning for 3 years, I'd miss my marriageable age, so she hastily married me into the Song family. I knew father was my strongest support. Even if the Song family wanted to bully me, they wouldn't dare blatantly marry me to Marcus. Unless they were certain father would never wake up, or that Marcus wouldn't either. But why did they seem to show no regret even after Marcus had awakened? I thought and thought without finding an answer, but Marcus's words made me feel that returning home would surely reveal the truth. I stood still, calling Rose over to prepare gifts for tomorrow's return visit. I wanted to see clearly what demons and monsters were at work. Rose acknowledged the order, but after walking just a few steps, turned back. Seeing me still in a daze, she tugged at my sleeve. "Miss, for tomorrow's return visit, the young master must accompany you, otherwise madam will worry." I immediately whipped my head around, gritting my teeth. "Rose, why didn't you remind me earlier? Now look what's happened, I've offended Marcus to the very core. How could he possibly agree to accompany me on the return visit?" Rose pursed her lips. "Miss, you speak so quickly, I couldn't get a word in even if I wanted to. Of course, I wasn't really blaming her, just blaming myself. If I returned tomorrow without Marcus accompanying me, Mother would have to cry with worry again." I looked up at the sky and sighed helplessly. "Rose, I'm afraid your mistress won't be able to divorce after all." Night had fallen deep, the lamp in the study still unextinguished, while I sat absent-mindedly on the red brocade-covered bed. Grace and Rose stood beside me, nudging each other, seeming to want to say something but not daring to speak. I sighed once more. "Miss, this is the 32nd time you've sighed." Grace looked at me as if risking her life and spoke bluntly. "Why don't you go call the young master back to the room?" I turned my head stiffly. Would he agree to come back? Rose pulled out a piece of fabric from behind her, closing her eyes as she held it before me. "Yes. If Miss wears this, the young master will definitely follow you back." I looked at that pink fabric, picked it up and realized it had some strings attached, and was so thin you could see the palm of your hand through it. I couldn't believe it. "You want me to wear this to call someone?" Both little maids' faces turned red as radishes, stammering. "The Duke would rather sleep in the study than divorce, miss. He must truly care about you. Since divorce is impossible, why not make the best of it and fall in love?" The two maids spoke with such conviction that I unconsciously remembered Marcus's enchanting peach blossom eyes. Every time he smiled, he was bewitchingly captivating. Thinking carefully, it seemed I wasn't losing anything either. Following the principle that not taking advantage when it's offered makes one a fool, I closed my eyes and put on that fabric thin as a veil, then covered it with an outer robe and pushed open the study door to enter. At that time, Marcus was leaning against a small couch reading, his tall figure making that couch look even more cramped. He only glanced at me briefly before looking back at his book, but still asked casually, "What are you here for?" I walked closer, speaking gently. "I've come to invite my husband back to the room to rest. Not going. If I go, you'll demand I write a divorce letter again." The study was excellent, breezy from all sides, quiet, with the resentment in his words nearly congealing into visible form. I stood dumbfounded for a moment, then sat on the small couch that was already small, and now more than half occupied by him, then removed my outer robe. "If my husband won't return, then I'll have to stay in this study with you. It's just that I'm wearing so little, if I catch a cold tomorrow, I'll have to trouble my husband to take care of me." Marcus's gaze stopped on me, his pale face suddenly flushing red. "What are you doing?" I felt my face heating up too, but still forced down my shame and cast aside my modesty. Since I couldn't divorce, I might as well dutifully be a wife. Wasn't this step something I'd have to take sooner or later? I reached out to hook his belt, pretending to be calm. "Will my husband come back to the room with me?" Marcus's face turned red as blood. He immediately stood up, picked up the outer robe I had just removed, put it back on me, then bent down to untie the belt I was gripping, wrapped it around my hands behind my back, and carefully tied a dead knot. I looked down and tried to move my wrists, only to discover I couldn't break free. At this point, whether shame or bashfulness, everything disappeared like retreating tide. In my head, there was only one thought: Marcus had tied me up, and with a dead knot at that. I gritted my teeth. "Marcus, what are you doing, you blockhead who doesn't understand romance at all? Let me go, you can just stay in the study and sleep alone." Father was in trouble, I was forced into marriage, and ended up with my betrothed's uncle as husband. The day after the wedding, I was made difficult by my mother-in-law. I took the initiative to get close to my husband, only to be tied up like a criminal. Everything came crashing down, making me unable to react in time, and carrying the humiliation of being rejected when offering myself. Though I tried not to cry out, tears still spilled from the corners of my eyes. Marcus looked at me very seriously and wiped away my tears. Elena, originally you didn't want to marry me. If you plan to use this to force me to write a divorce letter, that's even more impossible. Marcus, will absolutely never divorce in this lifetime. I stared at him, my tears immediately drying. Marcus, you think I'm using this to demand a divorce letter? Is there something wrong with your brain? This person truly has a dark heart, seeing filth everywhere he looks. I struggled with my arms but still couldn't escape the bindings, glaring at him. Let me go, I want to go back to my room and rest. Marcus remained stunned, hearing me speak but still not reacting. Since my hands were useless, my feet still had strength. I lifted my foot to kick him, enunciating each word clearly. Marcus, let me go. Weren't you here to demand a divorce letter? I glared at him, not bothering to answer, only repeatedly saying let go. Seeing I wasn't saying anything else, Marcus stopped asking too, instead smiling brightly like a flower. He reached out to scoop me up horizontally, kicked open the door, and carried me straight to the bedroom. Passing by Rose and Grace who were secretly eavesdropping, he didn't bother to acknowledge them, only gently instructing, "Go heat some water." The two covered their mouths and ran off. I was placed on the bed by Marcus, trapped between his arm to eye. Elena, you don't want a divorce anymore, do you? Want a divorce? I stubbornly replied once more. Divorce? Marcus said nothing, just untied the belt around my waist, gently removing my outer robe. Elena, your whole body is soft, only your mouth is hard. He leaned down to kiss my lips, pausing slightly. Your mouth is soft too. His hands were like fire, burning every inch along my body. My mind was dizzy, and I blurted out, "What are you doing?" Consummating the marriage. I didn't resist, looking straight into his eyes filled with desire, slowly closing my eyes and softly answering, This should have been done on our wedding night. We delayed it until the second day. But I still kicked him. Marcus, do you even know what you're doing? Can you find the right place? His voice was muffled with frustration. It's my first time too. You're a duke, surely you don't have a single concubine. No, my lady, let me try again. I was both speechless and secretly pleased, having more patience now, working with Marcus to gradually explore the mysteries of the bedchamber. By the time our passion subsided, dawn was approaching. The moment I was carried into the bathtub by Marcus, I had already fallen asleep. When I woke up, the carriage had already stopped in front of the general's manor. I looked at Marcus in a daze, only hearing him speak warmly. Wait, today's return visit has already reached your home. My intention to turn over and continue sleeping immediately vanished. I quickly sat up, touching my hair. When I discovered my hair was still smooth and not disheveled, I breathed a sigh of relief. When did I get in the carriage? Marcus smiled like a fox. You were sleeping so soundly, I had no choice but to carry you up. Grace and Rose already helped you dress and do your hair, no need to worry. I remembered last night's wild affair, glared at him. Then immediately got off the carriage first. Mother and little sister were already waiting at the gate. I should have chatted with them more, but my heart was concerned about Father, so after just a few words I pulled Marcus running to Father's room. Father had been unconscious for nearly 4 months. Thanks to Mother's devoted care, his wounds had healed considerably. By normal logic, he should have awakened long ago, but he still showed no signs of consciousness. Marcus looked at the unconscious father and smiled slightly. Old man, you don't like me, but I've become your son-in-law, and now I have to save you too. Finishing his words, he reached out to examine Father's wounds, circled around once, then frowned and paused, deep in thought. His hand felt along Father's scalp. Before long, he pulled out a silver needle. I stared wide-eyed at that silver needle, not knowing when it had been inserted into Father's head, asking in shock, just because of this needle, Father has been unconscious all along. Marcus glanced at me, softly acknowledging, then continued, fortunately it was discovered in time. Otherwise, in a few more days, even if he woke up, he'd be a fool. I deliberately ignored how he addressed Father, carefully taking the silver needle to store safely, then let him examine the entire body once more, confirming there were no other needles before I dared to feel relieved. When will Father wake up? At least 3 months, at most 5 months. I exhaled in relief, tears welling up but not falling. Father had been unconscious for so long, with so many physicians shaking their heads and sighing. This was the first time anyone had given a specific time frame. Mother and little sister behind us also embraced each other, crying and talking. Waking up is good, waking up is good. After I finished serving Father by washing his hands and feet, I suddenly remembered Marcus once saying there was something suspicious in Father's study, so I told Mother and pulled Marcus to the study. Since Father fell unconscious, no one had entered his study. Partly because it contained important military secrets, partly because the whole family had lost heart. Thus, for 4 months, the desks and chairs in the room were covered with a thin layer of dust, except for a letter on the desk that was clean as new, obviously recently placed. I picked it up and saw it was addressed to me, which was strange since I had never left letters in Father's study. I opened the letter, and the handwriting inside was extremely familiar, but the content made me dare not read it a second time. It was Marcus who took it, slowly reading each character. I have already explained everything clearly to my husband. The current emperor's harsh rule has angered the people, so he should be replaced. My husband is also willing to lend Father a hand. The date of victory is set for today. Marcus suddenly understood, exclaiming in admiration, "No wonder they married you to me. It turns out to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone." I clenched my hands, staring at the characters on the letter. It was Adrian's handwriting. I had grown up with him, learning calligraphy together, and had received considerable instruction from him, so only he could forge my handwriting to such similarity. Marcus looked at the letter and snorted coldly, then tore it to pieces, casually throwing it on the ground. Then he turned to look at me, pouting. I was going to praise my lady's beautiful calligraphy, but now it seems ordinary. You should practice with my copybooks instead. Adrian teaching you only gives your writing a rusted air, it doesn't suit you. At this point, you're still worried about practicing calligraphy. Do you know if this matter hadn't been discovered in time, and was presented to His Majesty, what our fate would be? Extermination of 9 generations. Marcus stretched his arms, then pulled me into his embrace. But now we know. Besides, your husband isn't nameless before His Majesty. I may be gentle with you, but my reputation, my lady, is not gentle at all. Marcus spoke as lightly as if a world-changing crisis was nothing to worry about. Indeed, while anyone else at court could be criticized, even His Majesty faced remonstrance. But no one dared say a word against Marcus. I looked into his eyes, speaking in a low voice, "Husband, I want Adrian to pay the price. He wanted to kill my entire family, kept Father unconscious, and made me suffer countless humiliations. I want him to live his entire life in regret and pain." Time passed swiftly. 2 months had gone by. During these 2 months, Marcus and I lived peacefully and harmoniously, without any disturbance. Sophia and Adrian also caused no more trouble, but the atmosphere always carried an undercurrent waiting to explode. We all understood that the current calm was merely the quiet before the storm. The slanderous letter that Marcus and I discovered on the day of our return visit had been burned. After that, we revealed nothing, only secretly staying vigilant, waiting for Adrian to slip up and expose his scheme. When Grace came running to tell me, "Sophia requests an audience," I was practicing swordplay in the courtyard. Upon hearing this, my initial joy was immediately shrouded by a layer of darkness. I replied indifferently, "I won't see her." Grace immediately ran to relay my response, but before long she hurried back in, her face full of panic. "Miss, she's kneeling outside the gate, saying if you won't see her, she'll keep kneeling until you agree to come out." I sheathed my sword, turned to enter the room. "Grace, help me dress and do my hair." I hadn't forgotten that Sophia's belly had been unusually large that day, and I understood clearly that whatever brought her today would be no good. But if I let her kneel outside the gate and something truly happened, it would be difficult to explain. Better to take the initiative than sit and wait to be attacked. I wanted to see what trap Sophia was setting for me. When I stepped outside, the sky was drizzling lightly. Sophia knelt on the ground with her large belly, looking utterly pitiful. I frowned, intending to help her up, but she gave me no such opportunity. The moment my hand touched her, she cried out in agonizing pain and collapsed, fresh blood immediately spreading across her dress. "Elena, why did you push me? It hurts so much, my child." Sophia gripped my hand tightly with great strength, absolutely refusing to let go. I anxiously tried to free my hand. "Let go, I'll go call a physician for you." Sophia, if you won't let go and something life-threatening happens, what then? Sophia paused, a flash of bright red like blood appearing in her eyes, then she fiercely pulled me closer, gritting her teeth. Elena, I stole your husband. I know I'm not a good person. But I just want to live a little better. Help me get rid of this child that shouldn't exist, and I promise I'll never cause you trouble again. I don't know why, but I suddenly found it amusing. She also knew she had taken away the betrothal that originally belonged to me. Though I no longer cared, she had indeed stolen it, yet still wanted to pin a false accusation on me. I lowered my eyes, coldly prying her hand away, speaking in a low voice, the sins you created, why should I bear them? Whether the child in your belly belongs to Adrian or not, you know in your heart. I, Elena, cannot and will not bear this blame. Sophia's clothes were already stained red with blood. After hearing my words, she immediately laughed madly. But it's too late, Elena, you cannot escape this blame. As soon as she finished speaking, Adrian's panicked voice rang out from afar. Elena, you vicious woman. What have you done to Sophia? Adrian carefully lifted Sophia up, glaring at me with hatred, then gritting his teeth. If I can't keep my child, then you shouldn't expect to live peacefully either. Adrian's threatening voice echoed in the air. I laughed softly, saying nothing, just silently watching Adrian carry Sophia away. Only after they had gone far did I whisper softly, Adrian, so you're finally ready to make your move. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Sophia suffered for an entire day and night, but the child in her belly ultimately couldn't be saved. Marcus held me as we sat on the bed, his tone gentle. This play is finally about to begin. Are you afraid? He deliberately blew warm breath on my neck, making me shrink my shoulders and glare at him. Don't blow on my neck. What is there to fear? The outcome was already known, what was there to be afraid of? But I still hesitated a bit. Just promise me you won't make lanterns from their skin, alright? Marcus fell silent for a moment, then buried his face in my hair and laughed. Your husband may be cruel, but not to that extent of brutality. Those words were nothing more than rumors. It seems those rumors frightened my lady quite a bit. I pursed my lips, turned my back and pushed him away, sulking unreasonably. Then why do all the rumors target you and not others? Marcus was rarely at a loss for words, not knowing how to respond for a moment. Seeing him like this, the anger I'd felt from being frightened on our wedding night finally dissipated. I pointed at him, and burst into laughter, looking mischievous. Husband, speak up. Marcus reached out to grasp my finger, then pulled my wrist, using just a little force to pull me down onto the bed. He pressed down on me, lowering his head to look at me. Your humble husband has never argued with anyone. I only use actions instead of words. Whether killing people or making love, it's all the same. The autumn rain fell on the leaves, continuous and unrelenting, only stopping at dawn. But these were turbulent times that wouldn't let anyone sleep peacefully. When the sky had just brightened, Rose came running from outside to knock on the door urgently, her voice choked with tears. Miss, don't sleep anymore, something's happened. The Imperial Guard has surrounded the General's manor. I jolted awake from my dream. Marcus smiled at me. My lady, the show has officially begun. I acknowledged with a sound, then immediately got up to change clothes. Marcus had already put on his court robes, preparing to enter the palace. Now that His Majesty favored Marcus, the investigation of the General's manor would surely be entrusted to him. I took his hand, speaking softly with concern. Husband, father hasn't awakened yet, and mother and little sister are timid. Don't frighten them. Rest assured. Marcus patted my hand gently, then turned to open the door and leave. Rose rushed in, her eyes red and swollen. Miss, what should we do now? Marcus and I had already anticipated this, but in others' eyes, it appears to be a great disaster. I shook my head to reassure her. Don't worry. My husband and I have our own arrangements. Now we should go to the main hall to meet those wolves. Sure enough, before long, a matron from Old Lady Song's retinue came to invite me over. Only this time the matron was much more clever than before, bowing her head respectfully and not daring to be disrespectful, fearing she'd anger me and be forced to kneel for hours like last time. I leisurely walked to the Great Hall, which was already packed with people. From a distance, it looked like a dark mass, everyone's face solemn, the atmosphere no less intense than a formal trial. I showed no fear, brushing away non-existent dust from my clothes before stepping inside. Kneel down. Old Lady Song's voice rang out with authority. You shameless wretch, kneel down. I bowed slightly in ritual greeting, my tone neither arrogant nor fawning. This daughter-in-law greets mother. Why must I kneel? Sophia, Adrian's wife, miscarried yesterday after meeting with you. That was the eldest grandson of the main branch, lost because of you, yet you still show no repentance. The speaker was Adrian's mother, her face full of anger, blaming me for not knowing regret. After hearing this, I only smiled coldly. The eldest grandson of the main branch, Sophia comes from humble origins. Whether the child in her belly belonged to Adrian is still unclear. Look here, one family with 2 dukes, and Adrian is the heir to Duke Piguo's title, with such noble status. For a commoner woman to enter the Song family as a concubine, she'd still need to pass strict selection. Now a woman from a brothel becomes the heir's consort based on pregnancy alone. Isn't that utterly ridiculous? I remained completely unflinching. Facing Adrian's mother's gaze, my clear voice rang out. Adrian's body was damaged, making it difficult for him to have children. So when he heard a woman outside was pregnant, he hurriedly brought her to the manor, not hesitating to break his engagement with me. All for that child. But that child was never Adrian's biological offspring to begin with. Everyone sat upright while only I stood tall, their faces all grave while only I wore a relaxed smile. Originally, I couldn't have known these things, but who told me to have such a capable husband? For the past 2 months, we've been secretly investigating, wanting to know what gave Adrian the audacity to harm my entire family. The more we investigated, the more shocking it became. Years ago, Adrian was naturally promiscuous, even forcing himself on a daughter of the Liang family. That woman was strong-willed and committed suicide in resistance, but also conveniently destroyed the source of his vitality. Though he received treatment later, he was already impotent in name only. Therefore, all of the Song family's hopes transferred to his younger brother. But if Adrian hadn't died, the position of heir to Duke Piguo couldn't be passed to his brother. So the Song family plotted against the Duke of Zhengguo's position. They drugged Marcus with a substance that would make him sleep and then die, but midway through, Sophia's pregnancy occurred. Therefore, they had to stop the poison, hastily marry me to him, then find an opportunity to plant a treasonous letter on father's desk, hoping to accuse both Marcus and father of rebellion. This would both seize his title and gain merit with the court, legitimately elevating Adrian's brother to nobility. The plan was clever, but they underestimated both Marcus and me, and overestimated themselves. Marcus holds power at court, a moment's carelessness could lead to being harmed, but once he regained consciousness, that was the moment the Song family's doom began counting down. I smiled as I looked at Adrian's mother, who angrily slammed the table. You're talking nonsense. My expression didn't change. How could I talk nonsense? You've been pregnant too. A normal malignancy, how could it be so large? You're just confusing yourselves. Adrian's mother stood up abruptly, her lips moving as if she wanted to say something, but couldn't refute my words, so she sat back down. Old Lady Song coughed lightly. Whether the child in Adrian's wife's belly belonged to him still needs investigation. But now you and Marcus have brought disaster upon yourselves, yet you still dare to be so arrogant and lawless. I raised my face to meet Old Lady Song's gaze, sharply questioning her. What disaster have we brought upon ourselves? You incited Marcus and your father to rebel. Now the Imperial Guard has surrounded the general's manor. Father has been unconscious for months, how could he rebel? And when did I ever incite my husband and father to rebel? Does mother have evidence for such claims? I advanced step by step, pressing with each word and sentence. Old Lady Song was momentarily tongue-tied, showing signs of panic, but still forced herself to stand and bow to the clan elders sitting below. No, His Majesty has issued an edict to investigate the general's manor. General Yun's crime of treason is as clear as daylight. To avoid implicating the Song family, I painfully remove Marcus from the family genealogy, hoping the clan leaders will permit this. The sounds of agreement from below rose almost immediately in unison. I lowered my eyes without saying a word. These people had clearly been plotting and arranging this for some time. The Song family acted swiftly, not even bothering with the ancestral hall. The young servant standing nearby had already prepared the genealogy, laying it before me to cross out Marcus's name. I laughed softly, turned to leave since he was no longer a Song family member. Why should I stay? Stop. Old Lady Song's voice came from behind. I stopped and turned back. What else does old lady Song wish to instruct? Even though Marcus is no longer a Song family member, he's still my son. Now that disaster has befallen us, if the Song family voluntarily submits a petition to the palace pleading for mercy, we might still preserve our titles. You two have committed the great crime of treason and have no children to carry on the line. As his mother, I will arrange for Adrian's eldest son to be adopted by you to inherit the title. The whole family's scheming was so loud that even I, standing in the general's manor, could hear every detail. I curved my lips in a cold smile. Why doesn't old lady Song immediately have someone bring that child over for the adoption? Adrian's mother panicked and shouted, "How can this be? You two have committed treason punishable by death to 9 generations. How can my grandson follow you two to die?" I darkened my expression, laughing with contempt. You people truly won't rise early without profit, willing to abandon all face for a title. But the Song family shouldn't waste their efforts. Even if I lose the Duke of Jungwo title, I absolutely won't let it fall into your hands. Put away those filthy thoughts, Rose. Let's go. Since Marcus had been expelled from the Song family, I no longer needed to pretend with these petty people. Upon returning to my courtyard, I immediately had servants pack our belongings. Marcus was the Duke of Jungwo and naturally had his own manor, but the old Duke of Piguo had instructed before his death that Marcus shouldn't leave the manor, so he had to live with those people. Now that he was no longer a Song family member, he should naturally move out. Rose pouted resentfully. Those Song family people are truly shameless, daring to do anything. They deserve their decline. Without the Ninth Master, I doubt anyone in the capital would even know of their family name. She spoke while angrily throwing bedding and pillows around. I laughed teasingly. Good Rose. Even if Duke Piguo's manor has declined, it's still a ducal household. How could it be forgotten in the capital? Or have you been corrupted by the Ninth Master too? Do you want to go kill people to vent your anger? Rose stamped her feet, turning anger into laughter. Miss. I covered my mouth and laughed. After laughing enough, I gently comforted her. Alright, don't be angry anymore. In the future we'll live peaceful days without having to face such filthy matters. Grace stood beside us, adding her voice with a worried expression. That's easy to say. But miss, don't forget the situation at the General's manor is still unclear. I trust Marcus. What he said must be true. I looked up at the sky outside the window, thinking he must have left the palace by now, then lowered my head to continue packing clothes. Grace, it's fine. Investigations like this are usually handled by my husband. Perhaps he's already at the General's manor now. As long as he says everything's fine, then it definitely is. Seeing me so calm, the two maids gradually relaxed and focused on packing. We packed until evening before loading everything onto carriages to depart. Just as I boarded the carriage to leave the manor, I encountered Adrian returning. He looked at me with regretful, calculating eyes, stretched out his hand to block the carriage, and spoke. Alana, I was wrong to deceive you into marrying Uncle Marcus. If you're willing to divorce him, I'm still willing to marry you. I glanced at him. What about your Sophia then? Just a courtesan. If she weren't carrying my flesh and blood, I'd find even keeping her as an outer concubine distasteful. My gaze followed that flashed past the manor gate, and I smiled coldly, looking straight at him mockingly. Adrian, I've already told you, my husband is strong and healthy, elegant and handsome, 10,000 times better than you. Adrian had originally missed the phrase, strong and healthy, but his expression immediately darkened, and he ground his teeth. Then go die with him. Fine, though it's still unclear who will die by whose hand. I let down the carriage curtain, casually saying, let's go, and left that place, naturally not seeing Adrian's venomous gaze behind me. The Duke of Jungwo's manor was arranged elegantly without losing magnificence. I heard it was personally ordered by His Majesty for the Internal Affairs Department to oversee. So many furnishings were palace items, everything demonstrating His Majesty's favor toward Marcus. Rose and Grace had just entered the manor and were looking around admiringly, nearly sighing in wonder. Even I, who had seen quite a few precious things, had to secretly praise. This Duke of Jungwo's manor was no less impressive than a prince's residence. By the time everything was arranged properly, night had fallen deep. After I bathed and sat on the bed, Marcus finally returned. I turned to look at him, finally showing my anxiety. How did it go? Marcus pulled me into his arms, looking relaxed. Everything's fine. I've been eating quite well at the General's Manor these past few days. All dishes made by your mother. Of course, mother's cooking is first rate. Father loves her dishes most. Marcus gently inhaled the fragrance of my hair, then asked about the day's events. How did I get expelled from the family genealogy? Only then did I remember today's commotion from the Song family, so I recounted everything old lady Song had said. After finishing, I couldn't help but sigh. The Song family's shamelessness is truly rare, unheard of in this world. Marcus was silent for a long while, then seriously turned my face toward him, solemnly saying, "Then let me take you to meet my real family." I was stunned for a moment, then a question slipped out. Isn't my husband the illegitimate son of the old Duke of Piguo and a woman he loved outside? Everyone says so. That the old Duke of Piguo was romantic and passionate, only meeting his true love after marriage, which is how Marcus came to be. Marcus also paused briefly, and the atmosphere suddenly became awkward. I came to my senses, secretly pinching my arm as punishment for my thoughtless words. Marcus slowly spoke. No, when I was young I lost my family and nearly died. The old Duke of Piguo found me and saved my life. I couldn't return to acknowledge my birth parents due to this life, save embrace. He hesitated briefly, then continued. Besides, my birth family's situation was complicated. To protect me, they never asked me to return either. A scene of hidden grudges and escaping from noble houses that couldn't be fully explained appeared in my mind. I looked at Marcus and said softly, "Husband, you don't need to say more. I understand everything." Marcus's words of explanation were still stuck in his throat, but I had already yawned, making him sigh and turn to adjust my pillow. "If you're sleepy, then rest. Tomorrow I'll take you to meet them." I grabbed his sleeve. "Won't you sleep with me?" Marcus reluctantly replied, "I was outside all day today. I need to bathe first." I sniffed, catching a faint familiar fragrance on him. My husband clearly smells like the grilled eggplant mother makes. Marcus pinched my nose. "Stop being mischievous. Sleep early, we have to get up early tomorrow." I huffed twice, then before long had fallen into sleep. The next morning, we indeed rose very early. Before the sky had fully brightened, I was already dragged up by Marcus to dress and apply makeup. After getting ready and sitting in the carriage, my mind was still hazy and not fully awake. When the carriage stopped, Marcus shook me awake. As soon as I got off the carriage, I was startled fully awake by the scene of red walls and green tiles before me, not just awake, but stunned. "Marcus, why are you bringing me into the Imperial Palace?" When I saw the Empress sitting on her throne, intimately calling my name, I truly came back to my senses. So the husband I married by mistake was actually the Empress's long-lost prince from years ago. I remembered the luxury of the Duke of Zhengguo's manor, having once thought it was no less than a prince's residence. It turned out I had truly been living in a prince's residence. Upon leaving the Imperial Palace, I held in my hands, dazed, the Imperial Edict restoring Marcus's identity and conferring upon me the title of Princess Consort. No, Marcus had now changed back to his original surname. He was Marcus Pei. He waved the Imperial Guard command token before me. "My lady, have you come back to your senses? We still need to go to the General's Manor to withdraw the Imperial Guards." I nodded in response, but was still so dazed that Marcus Pei burst into laughter. "Give me a few kisses on the cheek." This news spread throughout the capital as if it had wings. Before long, Duke Piguo's manor had also learned of it. What had been bustling with activity suddenly fell dead silent, then quickly erupted into panic. Old Lady Song collapsed into her chair, muttering to Adrian's mother. When the old duke was dying, he warned me 1,000 times never to drive Marcus out of the manor. I thought he was just favoring that bastard woman outside. So this is how it was. Old Lady Song was filled with endless regret. The entire manor was also shocked and worried. But His Majesty gave them little time to react. The edict stripping them of their titles was immediately issued. The crime of plotting against a prince, execution of 9 generations wouldn't be excessive. Only out of consideration for the old Duke of Piguo's life, saving grace to Marcus Pei did they merely strip the titles and reduce them to commoners. Meanwhile, Marcus Pei and I had already arrived at the General's Manor, joining Mother in the kitchen to prepare lunch. Outside, there was suddenly the sound of someone selling pastries. Looking around and seeing Rose and Faith, both washing vegetables, I told Mother, who was cutting vegetables, "Mother, I'll go out to buy some." After speaking, I turned and stepped out. The pastry seller had left but wasn't far away, so I jogged slowly after him. Just as I reached the corner, my neck suddenly felt a sharp pain, and I fell into pitch darkness. When I came to, I found myself tied to a chair, with Adrian and Sophia standing nearby watching me. Adrian's eyes looked at me darkly, full of resentment. Seeing me awake, he strode closer. I was somewhat afraid but still tried to stay calm. "Adrian, what do you want to do?" He bent down to look at me, his finger lightly tracing my cheek as he spoke in a low voice. "What can I do? Elena, now you're a princess consort, while I'm no different from a bereaved dog. All I want is just one night of spring passion with the princess consort." My eyes widened, my hands tied behind my back began to tremble, and I gritted my teeth threateningly. "Adrian, if you do this, Marcus Pay absolutely won't spare you. Though the Song family has lost their titles, His Majesty hasn't confiscated your assets, you can still live peacefully. Let me go, and I swear I won't breathe a word of this." Adrian pulled my hand up, slowly caressing it. "That won't do, Elena. You should have been my wife, you can only belong to me." I shook my head, looking at Adrian, who had lost himself to madness, and shouted loudly, "You were the one who married me off to Marcus Pay." Perhaps my voice was too sharp. Adrian momentarily froze, then finally began to regain some clarity. He showed a pained expression, shaking his head and stepping back. "I was wrong, but aren't you at fault too?" He went mad again, stepping forward to grip my chin, his eyes bulging as he ground his teeth. "You love him now, don't you? Who gave you permission to let him? You despise me too, don't you? You despise me for being crippled." He was frighteningly insane. I couldn't help but tremble, trying to lower my voice to calm him. "No, Adrian, I don't despise you. Please don't be like this, I'm scared." Adrian frowned, looking at me with suspicion. "You don't despise me?" Fearing he might act rashly, I quickly nodded repeatedly. "Very good." Then I saw Adrian reach towards Sophia, who pulled a packet of powder from her chest. Adrian held my face, forcefully prying my mouth open. No matter how I struggled, he poured all the medicine into my mouth. "Since you don't despise me, then come with me to paradise." "Ha!" Adrian's mad laughter echoed in my ears as he let go of my hands. I immediately tried to vomit it up, but the medicine had dissolved as soon as it entered my mouth. I could only spit up a little, the rest had already gone down my throat. "What did you make me drink?" Adrian laughed in response. "Naturally something good, though the medicine will take a while to take effect." He turned to Sophia, instructing her to watch me carefully. If she let me escape, he'd beat her to death. Sophia cowered in the corner, softly answering, "Yes." Adrian left the room. I didn't know what he was doing, only trying desperately to vomit everything up. After Adrian had gone far, Sophia approached, locked the door, then ran to sit in front of me. Uncomfortable. The medicine hadn't taken effect yet, and I felt nothing unusual, only glaring fiercely at her. "What exactly do you people want?" Seeing I was still fine, Sophia moved behind me and began untying my bonds. Her actions made me extremely suspicious. "What are you doing?" Sophia answered while untying me. "I don't have much time to explain. I can let you go, but you must promise me one thing." I didn't understand what kind of person Sophia was. In my entire life, I'd only met her 3 times, and each time she had harmed me. Now she wanted to save me. I truly couldn't understand it, but I had to grasp at this ray of hope. I immediately agreed. "Tell me what it is." "I'm not a respectable woman. My status and household registration were both bought by the Song Manor. If you escape, please ask Marcus Pay to grant me freedom. Now that everything has been exposed, if I remain with the Song family, there's only death awaiting me." I nodded in agreement. Just then, I felt my whole body growing hot. Sophia stuffed a pill into my mouth. Before I could ask, she proactively explained. "The drug Adrian forced you to take is specially used in brothels to deal with the disobedient. There's no antidote, but this pill can temporarily suppress the drug's effects. Once you're out the door, run north. Whether you can escape depends on your luck." The ropes had just been removed when I turned to ask her, "What about you?" "I have my own place to go." I nodded slightly, opened the door, and ran quickly north as she had instructed. Only after leaving did I discover this was a desolate, hidden place. I didn't even know how long I'd been captured by Adrian. I could only run headlong, absolutely unable to stop. I knew Marcus Pay must be searching for me. As long as I kept running, I would surely find him. But heaven seemed unwilling to show mercy. I hadn't run far before I heard Adrian's voice calling out. Looking back, I discovered he was chasing not far behind, his face full of rage, furious that I had escaped, furious that I had challenged his authority. No matter how fast a woman might be, she couldn't outrun a man. I hadn't been running long when he grabbed my collar. Adrian pinned me to the ground, his large hand gripping my throat tightly. You wretch, you dare to run. It must have been that bitch Sophia who let you go. You've all betrayed me. His strength grew greater and greater, my breathing gradually weakening. I couldn't speak, only pleading with my eyes for him to spare me. I didn't want to die yet. Father hadn't awakened, and mother and little sister would cry themselves to death. Most importantly, I hadn't yet lived out this life with Marcus Pay. I didn't want to die. Marcus Pay, where are you? Save me, you're tired of living. I heard a sharp shout, then Adrian's body was kicked away, forcing him to let go. I fell into a pair of warm arms, the familiar scent making my heart calm. I clutched his clothes and sobbed. Marcus Pay, why did it take you so long to come? I was scared to death. Marcus Pay held my arm tightly, his heart beating hard in his chest, letting me clearly feel the fear still lingering in him. Adrian had now been subdued and seemed to have regained some clarity, crying out, Uncle, I was wrong. Uncle, I shouldn't have violated Ninthant. Please spare my life. Marcus Pay pressed my head against his chest. I felt his chest vibrate as he spoke. Kill him. Adrian was still pleading, but the next moment he was completely silent. My hand trembled as I gripped Marcus Pay's hand. He thought I was afraid, lowering his head to speak gently. Don't be afraid of you. How could I be afraid of you? My eyes red with tears, I shook my head and whispered, Husband, I've been drugged. Marcus Pay immediately lifted me onto his horse, then mounted behind me and galloped quickly toward the city. This place was quite far from the city, even on horseback, it would take considerable time. By the time we reached home I had nearly lost my senses, holding on only through willpower to keep from crying out. Marcus Pay gently placed me on the bed, removed his clothes, and pressed down on me. The familiar breath surrounded me, making my heart strangely peaceful. We didn't sleep all night. When I awoke, it was already noon the next day. Marcus Pay had stayed awake all night, yet still seemed energetic and vigorous. The moment I met his gaze, he bashfully buried his head in the blankets. He held my waist tightly, pressing against me without any gap, his voice trembling. Finally found you. This moment of salvation wasn't mine alone. I wrapped my arms around him, softly acknowledging, then was about to close my eyes to continue sleeping. But his next words made me completely alert. Your father has awakened. I didn't notice that he called my father-in-law instead of old bastard, as before, only feeling ecstatic beyond measure. I didn't even care that my legs still ached, immediately jumping up to dress and pulling Marcus Pay's hand to run home. He also accommodated me, walking slowly to take care of me, and it wasn't until dusk that we reached the general's manor gates. Father stood at the entrance, holding a red, tasseled spear. Seeing Marcus Pay riding the same horse as me, he immediately ground his teeth. You Pay dog, come here and die. Who gave you permission to marry my daughter? I knew it, you've had designs on my girl from early on. I was bewildered. When had Marcus Pay ever had designs on me, and why were these two addressing each other this way? Marcus Pay called my father, old bastard, while father called him dog. Marcus Pay hid behind me, respectfully addressing my father. Honored father-in-law, if you really kill me, then the child in Alina's belly will have no father. Father, who had been brandishing his spear, immediately froze and stared at me intently, his eyes narrowing. You're pregnant. Looking at both their expressions and feeling the tense atmosphere, I quickly nodded to mediate the father-in-law and son-in-law relationship. Yes, father. I glared at Marcus Pay, then turned to smile at father. Elena, you're pregnant and still standing around. Hurry into the manor. Hearing that I had returned, mother cried and laughed at the same time. The whole family was overjoyed that father had awakened, and everyone busily prepared a reunion feast. At the banquet, Marcus Pay and father each had a cup, and before long both were red-faced from drinking. Only then did father shed tears, solemnly entrusting me to Marcus Pay's care. Leaving the general's manor, Marcus Pay, who had seemed drunk and leaning on me, suddenly sat up straight, his eyes clear with no trace of alcohol remaining. I looked at him angrily. You weren't drunk at all, what was that performance? Your father was drunk, so I couldn't not be drunk too. Well, since you're not drunk, let me ask you something. I pointed to my belly. Where did I go to suddenly have a child? Marcus Pay gently stroked my belly, his narrow eyes squinting. Who knows, maybe you already had one. Even if you didn't, with a little effort from me, you'd have one soon enough. I was speechless. After thinking for a moment, I realized what he said wasn't wrong. I just hadn't expected his words to become reality. A month later, the imperial physician confirmed it by taking my pulse. Marcus Pay was rarely stunned. I took his hand and placed it on my belly. Husband, we really do have a child now. Marcus Pay's eyes reddened as he held me tightly without letting go. Elena, I truly love you. Let's depend on each other like this and walk through life together. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.